was off the game clock prior to the timeout. Therefore, the game is over.
Oh, it's over. The game is over.
Why not?
Wow, it did look.
This has gotta stop. I wouldn't hesitate to say that the 2023-24 NBA season has been by far one of the worst years for officiating the league has ever seen. For some reason, refereeing within the NBA has been unusually awful lately, especially regarding no calls, overturned calls, and questionable texts. And it's a trend that's been consistently going within the game, and the fans have taken notice, and they've taken to Twitter and Reddit and begun eviscerating referees. And it's been for good reason. Like Shaq said in his post-game interview,
I know you were frustrated at how the officiating went down the stretch there, but you guys pulled it out and was a big win.
David Stern wonder why the league is losing money. That's why. People pay good money to come watch these athletes play, and they try to take over the fucking game.
Every fan base has been touched by this epidemic of horrible refereeing, some unequally benefiting and being harmed by the terrible decision-making of these refs, with a few notable examples being the worst missed out-of-bounds call of all time, or this absolutely egregious missed foul call on Cam Whitmore, who got essentially zero basketball on this block. And subsequently Tatum got ejected, which embodies everything wrong with the league's soft officiating today. Of course, if you're a Knicks fan like me, and by extension a Celtic op for life, you could chalk this up to being karmic retribution for Tatum's horrible missed foul on LeBron last year, but what do I know? But speaking of that moment, let's zoom in on the guy that made that game-deciding call, or lack thereof for that matter. Meet Jason Goble, a man who's been in some hot water recently, especially if you recognize the clip from the opening of this video, where he decided instead of going out of the way to ruin the game through his inaction, he would decide to ruin it through making the worst foul call I've ever seen in my entire On February 12th, while officiating a Knicks-Rockets matchup, Goble decided that he would try to make a record for the most unethical officiating the NBA has ever seen, letting the game be hyper-physical up until the end where he decided, you know what? I think I'll ruin it for everybody. Now, after watching this foul call live and going through the range of emotions that getting absolutely cheated forces you through as a Knicks fan, I decided to do my research and look into potential factors, his refereeing history, and all of his experiences with the Knicks. I was advised by my grandmother to seek legal counsel before I make the statement that I'm about to make, so the lawyer said it's all good as long as I clarify that it's an opinion. So, in my opinion, Jason Goble is rigging NBA games, and he's the worst thing to happen to the Knicks since Phil Jackson. With that being said, Jason Goble,
there's no way out of this one.
In order to qualify my claim, I decided to check the NBA's refereeing assignments and look at how many games the Knicks have played, followed by the free throw attempts we got, and specifically the free throw attempts that Jalen Brunson got. For my critical thinking viewer out there, the reason why I decided to look at Jalen Brunson's free throws and not Julius Randle's is that Julius has been injured as of recent, and also he's a more physical player, and therefore I think that excuses some of the imbalanced officiating that'd be present with Julius. Anyways, this season, Jalen Brunson is shooting about 6.5 free throws a game, which is 0.1 less than Randle, and I want you to keep this number in mind as we talk about the next few referees. But before I get to slandering Jason, and trust, there will be slander, I want to give a shout out to some of the most underappreciated referees in the league. To show my appreciation, I decided to make a little referee hall of fame of sorts, and our first inductee is none other than Mr. Zach Zarba. In games officiated by Zach Zarba, Jalen Brunson is shooting 8.75 free throws a game, way above that 6.5 number, and a testament to his service and commitment to New York. And for that, Zach, we all salute you. Our next and final inductee, and the MVP of all officials this season for Knicks fans, Mr. Pat Frayer. In games officiated by Pat Frayer, Jalen Brunson is shooting a whopping 10 free throws a game, and for that, he's always protected and welcome under the orange and blue skies. We salute you, Pat. We salute you. Zach and Pat embody everything that refereeing is supposed to be in the NBA, a bastion of hope in a sea of horrific refereeing. And if they're hope, a sort of Kareem or LeBron-esque figure, Jason Goble is Denzel Valentine. For a brief overview of Jason, he's been officiating NBA games for 8 seasons, and before he decided to become an official, he was a Miami cop for 13 years. I think I'd also like to mention that in the 2022-23 season, Miami was 7-0 whenever he officiated them. Do with that information what you will. In terms of his officiating style, I'll let the numbers speak. Out of all the teams Goble officiates, he calls the second least amount of fouls on New York, only calling more on the Utah Jazz, and he calls the 4th least amount of fouls on New York's opponents. The man doesn't blow his whistle when we play. This season, when officiated by Goebel, Jalen Brunson is only shooting 6.33 free throws a game, which you might say at first glance isn't that bad, close to his 6.5 average, but let's dig deeper into that number. On October 25th, he was the second referee when we played Boston. In that game, Jalen Brunson shot 1 free throw on a 6 for 21 shooting night, only attempting 8 threes, and the 1 free throw was a technical foul. Furthermore, Goebel made 10 foul calls on the Knicks overall, and only made 5 on the Celtics. Interesting. Both teams ended up shooting 26 free throws that night, but Jason managed to call twice as many fouls on the Knicks than the Celtics. The next game that Jason officiated on November 30th was when the Knicks played the Pistons, and I have to admit, these numbers do make Jason look like a pretty impartial referee. In fact, they kinda make him look like he favors the Knicks. Jalen Brunson ended up shooting 10 of the Knicks' 28 free throws, and the Pistons only ended up having 17. But I'd like to remind you all that this was in the midst of Detroit's big losing streak, and this made their 16th straight loss. Now, I'm not going to say that the only team that officials hate more than the Knicks is the Pistons, because that'd be ridiculous, but if you look at the trend recently, especially in our last game, how controversial the ending was, you might get what I'm trying to insinuate. But if you leave this game believing that Jason Goebel is an unbiased ref and that he might have an affinity for the Knicks or that the Pistons are just bad, then I can't blame you. The next game he officiated, though, was February 12th against the Rockets. For the sake of my own sanity, I'm not going to dive back into this game, but JB only shot 8 free throws, going 10 for 25 from the field with 6 threes in an unusually physical game where there weren't a lot of calls made for the Knicks. Goebel made 11 foul calls against the Knicks compared to 8 against the Rockets. You know, with the calls being that close in number, you'd almost begin to think that he was impartial. And then he makes that last call and you remember, he's a scammer. To top it all off, in this game the Knicks shot 12 free throws compared to Houston's 28. Now like I said, I'm not saying anything, but the math ain't mathin', Jason. So I've thrown all these facts at you and you're probably wondering to yourself, what does it all mean? So what? A referee isn't making foul calls for your team. Boo-hoo, poor Knicks fan. And in some aspects, you're completely right. 3 games is not a large sample size, and ultimately these trends may end up switching the more games he officiates. But in an age where everybody's gambling and sports betting is at an all-time high, and people are losing their hard-earned money, the numbers point to a clear pattern. Ultimately, all of this is up to interpretation, and you can decide whether you believe that he's a cheater or I'm just a Knicks fan complaining, because both things can be true. I'd just encourage all of you to be skeptical and do your research on these referees and everyone, especially before placing your hard-earned money on any basketball game. So that's gonna do it for this video. Before I leave, I have to mention it. Jason with the CY is crazy. As someone who spells Johnny Jani, I think I'm a professional on weird spelled names. Jacyn is the most insane spelling of that name I've ever seen. I'm sorry. Alright, later. Subscribe, like, all that.